It was my father's 65th birthday, and I almost didn't go. I hadn't spoken to him in nearly 6 months. Not since he casually mentioned over lunch that he was restructuring the will and that some changes were inevitable. He said it the way you'd mention changing the oil on your car. No emotion, no explanation. Just business. That was always his way. Everything was transactional, even family. But my wife convinced me to show up. It's a birthday, not a war, she said, half joking. Be the bigger person. So we went. I bought him a bottle of 18-year-old scotch and printed a single sheet of paper, neatly folded and tucked it inside the box like a letter bomb. The party was exactly what I expected. Too many people, too much noise, and not nearly enough sincerity. The house was packed with my father's lawyer friends, old golf buddies, and business acquaintances who probably hadn't liked him in 20 years, but liked his money just fine. My siblings were there too. My older sister, Rachel, hovered around our dad like a loyal puppy, laughing at everything he said before he even finished the sentence. My younger brother, Max, stood off in a corner sipping whiskey and smirking at the chaos. He had that smirk on his face all night, the one he always wore when he knew a secret you didn't. And then there was me, the middle child, the afterthought, always just enough, but never quite enough. At one point, my dad stood up to make a toast. Everyone gathered around, drinks in hand, fake smiles plastered across their faces like wallpaper in a haunted house. He clinked his glass and said, "I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight. 65 is a big one, and if I've learned anything in my long life, it's that family is everything." That line alone would have made me gag if I wasn't used to his hypocrisy. Then he turned toward me. "Even you, Nathan," he said, pausing for effect. "You're not my biological child, but you showed up. That counts for something." Laughter erupted, like a grenade thrown in the middle of the room. I just stood there, not smiling, not blinking. That single sentence detonated everything I thought I'd reconciled years ago. He wasn't done. "Oh," he added with a chuckle, "and since you're not technically mine, I figured it was silly to include you in the will. I mean, what kind of legacy would that be, right?" More laughter, louder this time. That's when I walked up, placed the gift box gently on the table, and said nothing. He raised an eyebrow. "Did you bring me something, son?" I just nodded, then turned and walked away. But before I left the table, I looked him dead in the eye and said, "You'll want to read what's inside." He laughed again. He always laughed when he was uncomfortable. He didn't open it right away, too busy basking in the glow of his own ego. But an hour later, when the drinks ran dry and the crowd began to thin, I saw him pick it up. He tore off the wrapping paper and lifted the lid. The bottle of scotch got a grin. But then he saw the folded white sheet tucked beneath the foam padding. He unfolded it. I watched from across the room as his smile dissolved. He read it once, then again, slower this time. He looked up, scanned the room for me, but I was already gone. The paper was simple. Black ink, Times New Roman. Just one sentence long, but it was enough. By the time he managed to piece it together, mentally, emotionally, legally, his entire world had begun to tilt. That night, his face didn't just turn white. It turned ghostly, and that was only the beginning. The paper said, "I know about the trust, and so does Rachel's lawyer." That's all it said. Just one sentence, but it was the right sentence, and it landed like a guillotine. To understand why my father's face drained of color like a punctured bag of milk, you need to know about the trust. It was a dirty little secret I wasn't supposed to know about. A document created over a decade ago, back when my father was still trying to play puppet master with all our lives. It wasn't in his name. Of course not. Too traceable. It was buried under shell companies and managed by an offshore firm in the Caymans. The kind of thing only the very rich or the very paranoid bother to create. But here's the thing about paranoid people. They tend to keep receipts. And I'm very, very good at finding receipts. 2 years ago, I stumbled across a set of documents while helping my mom clean out her garage after her knee surgery. My parents divorced when I was a teen, but they stayed weirdly cordial over the years. The kind of cold civility that makes holidays feel like corporate retreats. Anyway, tucked inside an unmarked banker's box labeled Old Tax Junk, I found a copy of a legal agreement, dated 2011. My dad's signature. A trust worth around $12 million, intended to pay out annually to direct descendants of Robert Ellison upon the dissolution of estate-based assets, which, in normal speak, meant the money would go to Rachel and Max when Dad died. But not me, not the non-biological child. I kept the file. Didn't say a word. Not then. Instead, I started digging. Quietly. Patiently. I contacted a friend of mine, Lena, a tax attorney with a vengeful streak and a taste for bourbon, and I told her everything. We spent the better part of a year putting the pieces together, confirming what I already suspected. My dad had built a financial fortress, one that excluded me entirely. And worse, Rachel didn't know either. Max might have. That smirk of his made more sense now. But Rachel? No. She was the golden child, the dutiful daughter, the family caretaker. She believed every compliment Dad ever threw at her. So I told her. 3 months before his birthday, I sat her down over coffee and dropped the trust paperwork on the table. She didn't believe it. Not at first. But then she read it. And read it again. And then she screamed. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just this low, throat-shredding kind of hiss that sounded like someone was choking on rage. You're saying he made sure Max and I would get the money. But you wouldn't. Worse, I said. He didn't tell you. And he put Max's name on it 3 years before you even graduated college. Her hands started shaking. What the hell do we do? That's when I told her about the lawyer. A friend of Lena's. Someone discreet. Someone brutal. I told her to wait until after the birthday party. That I had a plan. So when my father opened that gift and read that sentence, he didn't just read a threat. He read an inflection point. A warning that his carefully constructed house of lies was about to burn. Because if Rachel's lawyer got involved, the trust could be challenged. Hidden assets could be exposed. And his iron grip on the narrative, on us, would slip forever. And here's the best part. That wasn't even the worst news he'd get that week. The worst was what I'd put in motion before the party. It involved a name he hadn't heard in years. A woman he'd thought was dead. And a secret he'd buried so deep he'd convinced himself it didn't exist. I had unearthed it, and it was coming for him. 3 days after the party, my father got a letter. It was hand-delivered by a courier wearing a suit, not a mailman. No return address. Just his name in perfect calligraphy. Robert Ellison. He opened it in his study, alone. I wasn't there to see it, of course, but Rachel was. She called me immediately after. Said his hand was shaking so badly, he spilled his scotch. What the hell is going on, Nathan? She asked. Who is she? Her name is Clarissa Gable. And she's my mother. Not the woman who raised me. Not Mom. Not the one who packed my lunches and took me to soccer practice and cried when I left for college. No. Clarissa is the woman who gave birth to me. The woman my father tried to erase. See, when I was 15, I overheard a fight between my parents. Late at night. I had headphones in, but the yelling cut through anyway. You said you'd never tell him, my mom shouted. He doesn't need to know. She gave him up. He's mine now, my father said. I didn't know what it meant back then. I thought maybe they were talking about some long-lost relative. An aunt, maybe even an affair. But now I know they were talking about me. The truth came out when I confronted my mom years later, after I found the trust documents. She was reluctant, ashamed even, but I finally pried it out of her. She and my dad had been trying to have children for years. But nothing worked. Adoption was slow, expensive, bureaucratic. And then, somehow, through some rich people network, they found Clarissa. She was 19, pregnant, no support system, and desperate. My dad made her an offer, $80,000, no contact, and a lifetime of silence. But here's the part he didn't expect. Clarissa didn't want to give me up. She wasn't running from me. She was being pushed, manipulated, paid off. She had tried, in the early years, to send letters. My mom never told me. My dad intercepted them all. He paid to relocate her across the country. Paid her rent for 3 years. Then stopped. Cold turkey. She vanished. But not really. She'd kept records. Emails. Bank transfers. Even a signed letter from my dad, promising to ensure the child's prosperity in exchange for perpetual disconnection. His words, not hers. She kept everything. And when I found her, through a forum for closed adoption reunions of all places, she didn't hesitate. She said, "I've waited your whole life for this." I told her I didn't need a new mother. I just needed the truth. And together, we planned what would come next. That letter? The one my dad opened in his study? It wasn't a reunion attempt. It was a legal notice. Clarissa had filed a petition to open a formal inquiry into the adoption records, to request DNA confirmation, and to contest the legality of the financial agreement made under duress. It wasn't just a ghost from his past. It was a lawsuit, and it was coming with receipts. 3 days after the letter arrived, he called Rachel. And this is what he said, word for word. "Your brother has declared war." And he brought his biological mother as a missile. Rachel didn't defend him. She didn't laugh it off like before. She just said, "Maybe you should have put him in the will." But by then, it was far too late for a will. What was coming for him couldn't be willed away. The first offer came through Max. It was a Tuesday morning, and I was still in bed when my phone buzzed. The caller ID just said, Max. He'd earned that title years ago, after trying to guilt me into paying for our dad's golf membership, because you make more money now, and it's time to give back. I answer anyway. Big mistake. "Hey," he said, voice low and fake casual. "Dad wants to talk." He's not, mad. Just wants to figure things out. Says he's willing to be reasonable. Define reasonable, I said. There was a pause. Then Max dropped the real payload. He'll give you $500,000 if you sign something saying you'll back off. And the legal stuff. No contact with her. The woman. Clarissa. My mother. Even now, they refuse to say her name. Like she was Voldemort. I almost laughed. Let me get this straight. He thinks I'm going to take a check, disappear, and pretend none of this ever happened? Max chuckled nervously. Look, man, I don't know what's going on in your head, but Dad's not going to just let you torch his reputation and legacy over some mistake he made in the 80s. Mistake, I said, sitting up in bed. You mean me? Silence. I let it hang for a second before I said, tell Dad to go to hell. And tell him the price isn't $500,000. It's the truth. And I'm done waiting for him to hand it over. Then I hung up. Max texted me a minute later with one line. Don't say I didn't try. That afternoon, I met Rachel at our usual diner. She had 3 manila folders with her, 2 labeled Trust Correspondence, and 1 simply titled Dad, Leverage. We ordered coffee and got to work. The leverage folder contained decades of emails, handwritten notes, even an old voice memo from our dad ranting about how bloodline matters and how adoption is fine for charity cases, but legacy is legacy. Disgusting stuff. I told her about Max's call. She nodded slowly. He tried me too. Offered to put my kids through college if I backed my real family. I asked her what she said. I told him I already was backing my real family. Rachel had gone through hell in the weeks since learning about the trust. Her entire perception of our father had crumbled. The man who used to call her his princess, the man who claimed to be a self-made millionaire with nothing to hide, turned out to be a manipulative snake who not only lied for decades, but weaponized money to control everyone around him. He's out one more skeleton in the closet, Rachel said, opening her bag and pulling out a USB drive. I was going to hold it back, but screw it. Let's finish this. The drive contained something neither of us expected to find, a secret recording. Not made by us, made by our mother. It was a conversation between her and Dad from 15 years ago. She must have hidden it away and forgotten it. Or maybe she kept it as insurance. In it, our dad admits to Rachel's face that the trust was designed specifically to exclude any liabilities, and that Nathan me was the one loose end he wished he'd cut clean. I was 17 when he said that. I sat in that booth, listening to his voice call me a liability, and I swear I felt something inside me split clean in half. A dam bursting, a final nerve snapping. So we leaked it. We sent copies to 3 journalists. A 4th got the legal filings, the trust paperwork, Clarissa's sworn statement, even screenshots of Max's texts. The first article dropped within 48 hours. Prominent businessman hid son's adoption, excluded him from fortune, now faces legal storm. And just like that, the house of cards my father spent 40 years building collapsed in front of the world. He tried to spin it first. Posted a bland PR statement through his lawyer, claiming the details of the trust were misunderstood and no ill will was intended. But the story was too juicy. It got picked up nationally, then internationally. People love a scandal involving rich men who think they're untouchable. And only got worse. Because Clarissa? She was just getting started. She sat down for an exclusive interview, told her story on camera. Tears in her eyes, calm but unflinching. She didn't even name him outright. She didn't have to. The timeline and the receipts spoke for themselves. You never forget giving up your child, she said, especially when you're told he'll be better off without you. And then you watch from afar as he's treated like a ghost. The public ate it up. Suddenly, I was getting phone calls from morning shows, podcast hosts, even Netflix producers. But I didn't care about fame. I cared about one thing. For the first time in my life, my father couldn't laugh me off. He couldn't wave me away like I was a footnote in his success story. He couldn't erase me with a smirk. I was a headline. And soon, he'd be something worse, a footnote in my story. It was raining when he came. Figures, right? Of course it was raining. That kind of poetic, gray-soaked drizzle that Hollywood would call too on the nose. He didn't text, didn't call ahead, just showed up. I saw him through the peephole. My father, Robert Ellison, the great man, the legacy builder, the king of his own castle. Drenched, no coat, no umbrella, just a desperate, sunken version of the man who had once laughed at me in front of 50 people and told the world I wasn't his. I opened the door, barely, just enough to let the smell of wet wool and old pride drift in. He looked small, smaller than I ever remembered. His voice cracked when he said, "Can I come in?" I didn't answer, just turned around and left the door open behind me. Let him decide if he still had the guts to step into my house. He did. He stood awkwardly in the entryway, dripping all over the hardwood floor as I install myself. "I'm not here to argue," he said. "I'm not here to defend anything." I said nothing. He tried again. "I'm here to ask for forgiveness." That word, forgiveness. It hit me in a way I wasn't ready for. Not because I wanted to give it, but because of how long I'd wanted to hear it. "You want me to forgive you?" I said. "After everything?" He nodded slowly. "I do. You lied to me my entire life. You hit my mother. You told the world I didn't matter. And you want a clean slate because you showed up wet." "No," he said. "I want you to know I was wrong." I leaned against the wall, crossed my arms. "You weren't just wrong. You were deliberate." He nodded again, slower this time. "Yes." We stood in silence. Just the ticking of the wall clock and the dripping of rain off his sleeves. Then he said something I didn't expect. "I never wanted a third child." I blinked. "But when your mother brought you home," he continued, "I didn't know what to do. I felt cornered. And when I found out about your birth mother, about Clarissa, you paid her off?" I cut in. He flinched. "I did," he said. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought keeping things simple would make everything easier." "For who?" I asked. He didn't answer. That's when I finally said what I'd never said before. "I spent my entire life trying to make you see me, trying to earn a place at your table. And the moment I stopped trying, you showed up. Funny how that works." He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. The man who once wore $5,000 suits now stood in a soaked Brooks Brothers sweater, crying in front of the son he once called a liability. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I looked him dead in the eyes, and I told him the truth. "I'm not." His breath hitched. "Because I'm finally free of you, of needing your approval, of waiting for scraps. You gave me nothing, so I built my own table, my own life. And now you want a seat." I walked to the door. "Open it wide. You can leave, or you can stay standing here in the rain. But you're not coming in again." He looked like he might collapse. But he didn't argue, didn't beg, just stood there for a long moment, then turned and walked out into the storm. That was the last time I saw him in person. A week later, I got a letter from his lawyer. He'd amended the trust. Equal split between the three of us. Me, Rachel, and Max. But I didn't care. I had my own name now. My own path. A real connection with my mother. A sister who finally saw me. And a peace I never thought I'd earn. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But this wasn't revenge. This was a reckoning. And I didn't have to lift a single finger. He did it to himself.